everybody's singing the same tune, or whether they identify issues which we will address in our report. And on day 3 we'll have a final meeting with the programme management team, and that's your quick feedback, but the real feedback will come in the report. Peer review report will comment on the success in achieving the general and specific indicators, and I'll come to this in a minute, highlight evidence of good practice and scope for enhancement, which I've said already, and state whether the peer review has broad or limited confidence in the quality and standards of the programme, and this is important. And we have criteria which are in our handbook and on the web, the criteria that are used to assess the degree programme. So it's all quite transparent. And then the peer review report will end up by making a recommendation for accreditation to the yields board. There are really some key questions which are central to the assessment. Does the programme address the second cycle Dublin descriptors adequately? Does it demonstrate explicit learning outcomes? We've moved on from objectives for a degree programme to learning outcomes. What will the student be able to do having completed this course or this part of the degree programme or the whole degree programme? And that is testable in the assessment process. That is absolutely key to the assessment, quality assurance assessment process for EELS. If there are no learning outcomes, there will be no accreditation. And the other issue, which is central to the assessment, is there an internal quality assurance process of monitoring, feedback, evaluation and review within the degree programme. Also, does the programme recognise the student voice? Are students actively involved in giving feedback to the lecturers, course coordinator and so on? So will the students who we meet in the visitor say that they have been able to have an impact and feedback on the course? Well, not necessarily an impact, but at least have been listened to and told why their comments aren't relevant. So they feel they're involved in helping to enhance the delivery of the course. And also, because we're in international accreditation agencies, we're interested how the degree programme addresses internationalisation, bringing in staff from outside the particular countries or universities involved, bringing in an attractiveness to international students from third countries and so on. Having said all that, you set out your own objectives, aims for the degree programme. We will respect those. You have to meet the idea that it's an MSc degree programme which addresses the second cycle Dublin descriptors adequately. You have to demonstrate that you have explicit learning outcomes, but it's up to you then to determine exactly what the aim and mission of the degree programme is, and we'll assess it against that aim and mission. So if you say you're only interested in students coming from the southeastern Europe, then that's fine if you're clear. Now I want to come on to the EELS framework for quality assurance assessment of a degree programme. And this is the framework on which you will develop the self-assessment doctorate report. We have 6 categories of benchmarks. First of all, focusing on the needs, aims, objectives and learning outcomes of the degree programme. So what are you stating you want to do and why you want to do it? Then looking at the educational process, how is it taught, how is it assessed, and how are the students given guidance? The resources available and how you develop the partnerships to support the course, how you select the students and watch over their progression through the degree programme. Do the students get adequate support if they have problems? Some students always have problems within the degree programme. It's non-educational student support. And, as I've just emphasised just now, the quality management and enhancement process. How do you monitor what's happening on the degree programme, and how do you react to the information you get? I think a number of national accreditation agents will focus on the first bullet point here, needs, aims, objectives and learning outcomes. Perhaps also moving into the educational process, but probably don't look at the other bullet points on this list. So we're taking a comprehensive view of the whole process of the delivery of the degree programme at every level. So I want to then just within these 6 benchmark categories gives you some examples of how we pose this framework. There are specific benchmarks within the 6 benchmark categories, In fact, there are 27 benchmarks in all, across all the 6 categories. And for each specific benchmark, there are general and specific indicators. They're questions and prompts to help the degree program team write the self-evaluation report. And I'll give you some examples of these, just a limited number. If we take the first category, needs, aims and learning outcomes, one of the specific benchmarks is the mission statement, and an indicator, very obvious one, is there a mission statement for the degree program, and what is it? And the second specific indicator benchmark is the needs of stakeholders. Have the needs of the stakeholders been identified and taken into account in developing the learning outcomes of the degree program? And the third one, aims and learning outcomes. Are the learning outcomes consistent with the second cycle doubling descriptors? These arrowed statements here are the questions which we're asking you to respond to. You can say, this is what we do, and you give evidence base of what you do. You don't say, we have a mission statement, you actually give the mission statement. You can also say, well, we don't need to take into account the needs of the stakeholders because X, Y, and Z. I think that's unlikely, but you can say, this isn't relevant for us. So we're posing some questions. You can say, yes, this is how we do it, or you can say, this is not relevant in our case, and we can ask you why, perhaps when we come to talk with you, but maybe your explanation is quite adequate and we don't need to address it any further. So you don't have to say yes to everything in this long list of questions, but you have to say why not. Another example, the educational process. One specific benchmark is curriculum planning. Does the curriculum ensure the achievement of the learning outcomes? So how do you know that you said you're going to have these learning outcomes? You have to pinpoint how you know that those learning outcomes are being achieved by the curriculum that you set up. Another specific one is indicated, does the curriculum ensure that students continue to build upon acquired knowledge and skills? So we want to see that the course builds from a basic level to a more advanced level. And how is unnecessary overlap and rep avoided? How do you know when you're bringing in lecturers from different institutions, how do you know what's going on in that classroom? And how do you know that the students aren't hearing the same thing again? Maybe it's good to hear the same thing again. Maybe they get bored with hearing the same thing, and they will tell you, and you should be able to show that you've reacted. Again, the educational process can continue with some other ones. The teaching and learning process. What is the basis for the balance between lectures, participatory seminars, and individual group work? How do you decide the balance between those 3 major elements in the teaching process? And the assessment of learning outcomes. How has the assessment process been designed to demonstrate the achievement of learning outcomes? You state that you have learning outcomes, you say you have a curriculum which delivers it. Are you really testing that the students have been able to do what you said they should be able to do at the end of the course? And then moving to the quality and management, which has an enhancement process, which I said was also very critical, that you must have a good internal quality management process. Benchmark the decision-making process. What organizational and decision-making processes are in place to review the outcomes of the degree program? What committee structures are you set up? How, if the students filled in evaluation of their course and their good points and not so good points, and you summarize all that information, are you sure that the course leader actually reacts to that information? How do you prove that there is a process in place to make sure that what the students say or complain about is acted on? That's just one example. How do you use the stakeholders to evaluate what you're doing? What internal formal mechanisms are in place to assess the quality of the degree program? So those are just some examples. There's a long list in the handbook of questions against each of the benchmarks, and we ask you to respond to those in writing the self-assessment report. And when we come as a peer review team, we will have identified questions from the self-assessment report that we want to validate by discussion with everybody on the long list of people who would like to see from all levels in the degree programme. So finally, what's the benefits of quality assurance enhancement for the FOCO MSc? I believe the external quality assurance review will identify good practice and opportunities to enhance the programme. We're bringing in subject specialists from outside this region, I guess, and the quality assurance expert will come from outside the region, and so you'll have a view from outside. The EELS quality assurance framework will also support the development of the internal quality assurance process. By answering these questions, you will identify your strengths and your weaknesses, and you will react to that assessment. So we provide a framework in which you can assess the quality of what you're doing as an internal process. And the award of the EELS label will support you marketing FOCO to a worldwide audience beyond this region. And I think I gather what you're doing here is entirely relevant, bringing students from the rest of Europe and probably internationally. And when you're looking for sustainability, that would be a great benefit. So I believe a EELS review of your degree programme will be very valuable to you.